Today we're going to be doing a gear review and talking about the 5D Mark IV DSLR camera. Let's jump in. Alright guys, welcome to another gear review video where we talk about our personal experiences and not a whole lot of tech specs. So for those of you who are new to the channel, my name is Paul Friedman. Behind the camera over there we have Spencer Mendel, and together we make Maine Mountain Media. We are a photo video company based in the mid-coast area of the state of Maine. And today we'll be talking about the 5D Mark IV DSLR camera. The question on all of your minds, as I'm sure because you clicked on the title of this video, is it still relevant in 2020? Yes. That's it. That's the whole review. I'm obviously going to get into more of it, but if you guys want the long and the short of it, yeah, it definitely is. And for those of you who disagree, you can let me know below, but I'd love to have you hear me out first. The first thing I want to talk about is image quality, and that's sort of the foundation of all of these cameras. A camera is a bridge over water. It's a means to an end. It is a tool to get the job done, and the images that come out of this camera are unequivocally good. They are very, very good. For those of you who have been shooting since the SLR days and then switched to DSLR, you're probably kind of bummed out to find out that now you have to move into the mirrorless world as well. If you're anything like me, change is scary, but at the same time, it's exciting because so many new things are available. When you can shoot, with a live view through the viewfinder, you're out on a sunny day, but you're still getting that immediate feedback on what your exposure and color and all that looks like. That's kind of cool, and I like that, but there's still a lot to be said for being able to look directly through the lens. Having that single lens reflex is really awesome. And for those of you who are kind of new to photography and don't know, DSLR stands for digital single lens reflex, and this guy isn't Canon's flagship. That's technically the 1D series, but that's very much so a sports and action photography focused camera. If you're a wedding photographer or a portrait photographer, this is pretty much your top of the line DSLR available on the market. And to this day, it is still very relevant. It is such a good image quality tool. I mean, like the colors, the contrast, the crispness, the quality, the resolution. It's just an incredible camera. We have made some amazing photographs with these cameras over the years and continue to do so. For those of you who follow our landscape series, you know that Spencer still chooses to use this camera to this day. He lugs this thing around along with all of his big Canon lenses. I personally have made the jump to the Fujifilm series. We both shoot Fuji video, but I shoot Fuji photography as well. I love the mirrorless series. I love all of the pros that come with mirrorless setups, especially APS-C mirrorless setups. I am willing to accept all the cons that come with it. There is a downside to every choice in photography, and specifically with the DSLRs, I think the biggest downside for me is not getting that immediate instant feedback, that immediate view of the image that I'm seeing. I'm seeing the real world through the viewfinder, which for some people is perfect. That's what they look for. I'm over time getting a little more interested in seeing what the camera sees, seeing what the sensor is picking up. And I'm not a huge fan of looking at the LCD on the back of this screen. The autofocus system is not really well designed to be shooting in live view. It's way faster, way more accurate to be shooting through the optical viewfinder. And because of that, I have had a hard time sort of switching back and forth from mirrorless to DSLR to mirrorless to DSLR. Sometimes I'm looking through the viewfinder and all I'm thinking about is the moment, because to my eye, it looks like the image is going to come out great, and then I start chimping and realize, whoops, my exposure was off. And I didn't know that because I'm so used to an electronic viewfinder now that the optical viewfinder can be tough for me. But if I'm in the right headspace, if I'm certainly in a controlled environment like shooting portraits or headshots, and there's not a rush at all, I can get my light right. This is still my best camera that I own, and it's still my #1 pick for professional headshots and portraits. The glass that we own to go along with these are unparalleled. I mean, I absolutely stand by that decision, by that assertion that Canon L series glass is as good as or better than anything else you can find out there. I challenge you to find a better lens than the L series setup that Canon has provided. They are famous, world renowned for having the best glass in the industry, and their cameras match. I mean, there's no surprise that they have for so many years been the top selling camera company. And because of that, they've had the opportunity to put so much money into research and development of their products, and they have really, really stayed on the top for a very long time. I know all of you are sitting there shaking your heads at me going, no, that's Sony. That's recent. Sony has taken over, and you are right. They are outselling Canon for now, and we can talk about, you know, what the future of the market is until our faces go blue. But to be honest, it's all about the results. Whatever you need to use to get good results is the right camera for you. And for us, we've been using Canon DSLRs since 2008. So, you know, we're just so familiar with the interface. We're so familiar with, you know, all of the buttons and dials and you know, the autofocus system, the menu system, the colors that come out, we know how to work with them. And for us, that means so much. It goes so far to be able to, you know, have that consistency, to have that familiarity with the equipment that we're using. If you guys have seen any of my top tips videos, you might have already heard that I think it's really important that you know your gear. If you show up to a shoot and you're over here with your brand new, whatever it might be, Sony A9 Mark II, yeah, okay, it's one of the best cameras ever made, but if you don't know how to use it, you are going to mess up. And so familiarity with your camera, you gotta live with the camera and eat and sleep and breathe with the camera for a long time before you really know all the ins and outs, all the pros and all the cons, and how to work around the problems and how to really, you know, bring out the best in a camera. And I think for us, you know, working with one system for as long as we've been working with it, that alone is worth, you know, more than money can buy. And so that, I think, is a huge piece. If you currently own a Canon camera, consider sticking with it for a little while. I know there's new cameras coming out, but is this still relevant? It absolutely is. And rather than talking about the relevance, I'm just gonna run you through all the things that I personally and Spencer love about this camera. Again, it's about the results, the image quality. The sensor is incredible. 30 megapixels. It is such a fast autofocus system. And, you know, we're wedding shooters, so I know this for some people isn't that big a deal, but for us, 2 card slots, that's huge. That's why we haven't moved to the EOS R yet, because it doesn't have 2 card slots. I know people for a long time shot weddings with 1 card slot. We did. We shot with 60s for a really long time, and 60Ds before that. And in the film days, sure, yeah, you'd go home with 200 photos, and your film could get ruined and you wouldn't have second backups. Of course you didn't have second backups. It was the film days. But what I'm saying is, now that we have the option to shoot 2 card slots, it's hard to say no. It's hard to move away from that security, because technology fails. SD cards do go corrupt. We've had it happen. Other people have had it happen. Luckily, we haven't lost any major, you know, content, but, you know, it will happen. Knock on wood. It's going to happen at some point. It's just a numbers game. You know, we've been shooting hundreds of thousands of photos over the last decade, and most of them have been able to save to the cards. We use high quality SD cards. We use top of the line SanDisk cards, and we have had great experiences with them. But even top of the line cards fail, and having a redundant backup, having 2 card slots is fantastic. It's for us, it's a deal breaker in the wedding industry these days. I shoot the XT3s for a lot of my wedding photography, and that has 2 card slots, so that checks the box. But for a long time, I wanted to switch to the Canon mirrorless setup, and I'm still holding back. I'm still sticking with my 5D because of that reason. And, you know, sometimes I mix and match. Sometimes I'll shoot like my Fujifilm on one hip, but I have a really hard time not putting my 5D on the other hip, because it's just about results. It's such a good camera. The results, the final images are just that good. They really are. The dynamic range, the light collecting ability, all of it is just amazing. I talked already a little bit, but the ergonomics of these cameras is it's unchanged since they went digital. I mean, even some of the older SLR film cameras have this exact same form factor, and side by side without an untrained, to an untrained eye, you wouldn't be able to tell which one was which. They perfected this shape, this size. The batteries have been the same since we started with the Canon 60Ds 10 years ago. We have been shooting with this setup, this grip, for so long. It's really hard to say no at this point. The shutter press is rewarding. We got the shutter adjustment dial on the top is satisfying to use. It gives you instant feedback. I can know very well, okay, 1, 2, 3, there's one stop, 1, 2, 3, there's another stop, 1, 2, 3, it's another stop. Those types of feedback, this dial in the back for aperture adjustment, I'm so familiar with all that, and I love how everything's laid out. They have the joystick on here. I love joysticks. I hate touchscreens. I mean, as a rule, I actually love touchscreens. I think that technology is amazing, but when I'm shooting, a touchscreen doesn't do me very good because I like to keep my eye to the viewfinder, and if I'm up here and I'm looking through the viewfinder, it just doesn't really work that well to use the touchscreen. Also, for those of you who are like me and have a fairly decent sized schnoz, touchscreens are devastating. When I hold this thing up to my eye, my nose touches that screen, and I can't have the touchscreen be my autofocus selection point, chooser, because my nose would constantly be changing my autofocus selection point. So the joystick works really, really well for me. I love this joystick. I hope they add it to their new mirrorless cameras. And one thing that they added to the 5D4 that I think was on the Mark III, I'm not 100% sure. I know it started with the 6D Mark I back in the day, for us at least. But they had the quick switch from photo to video. Bang, 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 bang. No other settings need be adjusted. It's just one quick bang, there's your video. Now switch back to photos. I don't know if you guys can see that there. It's just this one little around the start, stop, thumb, record button. If you're in photo mode, this will switch from live view to the optical viewfinder. If you're in video mode, it'll start and stop recording. And it's so fast. It's right next to your thumb. When you're holding it, it's just switch, video, photo. So if you're a hybrid shooter, this was one of the huge features when this came out, and it's still really well designed. I really appreciate it. The menu systems on Canon cameras are still to this day best or as good as the best. I shoot a lot of Fujifilm. I love the customization in the Fujifilm, and all the sort of ability to create your own menu systems, and even just the native menu systems in Fuji cameras are awesome. I really like them, but I don't think there's a better menu system than the Canon system. If Fuji is as good as Canon, then okay, sure, I would agree with you if you wanted to make that claim, but I don't think there's a system out there, a menu system out there yet that's better than Canon's menu system. So that matters a lot to me. This isn't just a point and click tool. I don't just want to, work with my ISO, with my shutter speed, and with my aperture. Those aren't the only 3 settings that I'm using on these things. I'm trying to get into bracket mode and shoot real estate images. I'm trying to get into all the different autofocus settings depending on whether I'm shooting wildlife or whatever I might be shooting. And a good menu system, it matters a lot to me and a lot of other people. And so if you're the kind of person who likes to have an intuitive menu system, have a user interface that's helpful, it's intuitive, I mean, you will have to probably read the manual. Always read your manuals. When you get a new camera, read the manual. Or whatever. You just study up and practice if you insist on not reading the instructions. But basically, you could, if you didn't read the manual, I think you could intuitively figure out the Canon menu system and find most, if not all, of the features on your own because of how well they've set this up. They've got all these different tactile buttons down the side. With modern cameras, they're getting a lot more customizable, which I appreciate personally. I love making things my own and making things sort of work specifically for me. But the beauty of Canon is it's remained fairly unchanged. So once you figure it out, you know it inside out and backwards, and you can do it without looking. You can do it in the dark. I'm out there shooting Milky Way photos, and I can navigate my menus. I know where all my buttons are. I don't have to think about it. It's just like second nature, muscle memory. Boom, menus, down, across, 3. I know that sounds like I'm doing like an old Nintendo cheat code or something, but literally like I can memorize all of the keystrokes and buttons that I need to press to change all my settings in the dark. I don't even need to turn my headlamp on when I'm shooting in the dark with this camera. That comes in handy on wedding days. It comes in handy when I'm shooting Milky Way photos on a dark night. It comes in handy when I am just trying to get any job done quickly. The faster, the more you're familiar with your setup, the faster you can get it done. And because they have been so consistent, and because this camera has been around and still top of the line sort of image quality, I have stuck with it for long enough, and so has Spencer, that the two of us know them really well. And as I talked about, if you grew up with the Canon system, you were on the Canon 5D Mark 1, 2, 3, 4. They've added little bits and pieces that you can, have to adjust to, but overall, it's still the same general layout. So for a lot of people, it's so muscle memory at this point, and the ergonomics of this camera are absolutely amazing still. Also, the ruggedness of this camera. I mean, I have seen 5Ds take some serious beatings. We've shot action photography with these. When Spencer and I got our start in the industry, we were shooting for a ski mountain out on the hill, and our Canon, even our Canon 60Ds, it's like a high, slightly mid-range to high-end sort of consumer APS-C DSLR series. Not quite the quality of these, but still, it went through hell and back. And mine still shoots. Spencer found the bottom of a river, and though we retrieved the camera, it's a really expensive paperweight now. Although, to be perfectly honest, it still shoots. There's just a literal watermark through the middle of the sensor where the water soaked in and cracked the glass, the filter in front of the sensor, but it still shoots pretty good images. Like, you can still shoot it, and it went to the bottom it went down a waterfall and into a river. I mean, that's just, it still shoots. Oh, we didn't even have to put it in a bag of rice. We left it for a day and it turned on. I mean, I can't even tell you how rugged these things are. When I first got my 5D, the first thing I did with it was go out and shoot a winter scene, and by the third day, I had fallen so hard on the ground and landed directly on my 5D and my 70-200, both of which survived with minor scrapes, and still shoot to this day like new. Absolutely amazing construction and build quality, unparalleled. I can't get over how long these things have lasted and how good they still look. And if you ever do have a problem, Canon customer service is just the best in the industry. They will take care of you. They will take care of these cameras. And yeah, I can't say enough about that. I mean, customer service, a company that stands behind its product, to me, I mean, that is invaluable. You can't, buying a good product versus buying a pretty good product, but having the company stand behind it, that's a tough call. But if it's a top of the line product and the company stands behind it, I mean, that's, again, invaluable. Can't tell you enough how important that is to us, and how we have utilized it in the past. We beat our gear up, we shoot with them, and we aren't careful with them. We're all about getting those results. And if it takes, bopping the camera around, or occasionally dropping them around, or toss them in and out of bags constantly, or in and out of the car, we'll do what it takes to get the shots and do it right. So yeah, they take a beating sometimes, and Canon takes care of us. So build quality and construction, excellent. And then the autofocus system. I mean, no photo, you can underexpose, you can overexpose, you can make a lot of mistakes, but generally speaking, photos have to be in focus or they are unusable. I mean, if you miss by a little bit and they're acceptably sharp, that's cool, that works, that's fine. But in an ideal world, every image would be in focus. And talk about fast and accurate. I mean, the autofocus system in this camera is excellent. It can focus in super low light. It can focus very, very fast. It can, when people are walking towards the camera, say a bride coming down the aisle, you can very, very confidently say that as you come down the aisle, I will get all the shots in focus, and you can just click, 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 and I'm looking at like an 80 to 90% hit rate if my subject isn't moving super fast. And when I'm shooting wildlife, I'm looking at probably a 40 to 50% hit rate, which for those of you who shoot birds in flight or whatever, that's special. I mean, I know it's not a 1D, but I'm not a wildlife specific photographer, and yet still I can shoot, eagles flying, or I can shoot, great blue herons soaring over a river and get at least half my shots in focus with this camera, which is better than any other camera that I've ever owned or shot with. Again, I know there are cameras out there that are better and faster at autofocusing nowadays, but this is good. It's good, it's great, and it gets the job done for us, and we don't shoot specifically wildlife or action sports, so this is perfect for us. The frame rate is fast enough for action-y scenes. It's got all the specs, and I challenge you to show me a photo shot on a 5D that was well executed and just isn't of high quality. I mean, I guess maybe you could find plenty of bad photos shot on a 5D, but if I show you a good photo shot with a 5D Mark IV, I think you'd be hard pressed to say that's a garbage image, because it just isn't. They make good photos. Anyone who shoots Nikon and is a Nikon fanboy, sure, okay, there are things about Canon that you might not like, but you would be lying to me and to yourself if you say that this isn't a good camera. And so, that's fine. There are pros and cons to different systems. That's why they make red cars and blue cars, because different people like different things. But this camera is our top of the line camera. It is still going to be in our bags for a lot of the new year. I know there are some new rumors coming out for new mirrorless cameras from Canon that will have a lot of the things I talked about: high resolution, great image quality, dual card slots, and an electronic viewfinder, and potentially even a slightly smaller form factor with the RF mount. We will have to reassess where we're at, but if we switch, it won't be because these are bad. It'll only be because what they have now is better enough that it's worth the upgrade for us. I mean, the industry is ever changing. Technology is always improving. These will one day be outdated enough that they might not be considered top of the line cameras, but it's going to be a long time before these cameras just aren't even good enough or usable enough. I know people who still shoot the 5D Mark II and shoot weddings and make a business out of it, and I love the images that they get. I've talked to them about upgrading and said, how do you like your Mark II? It's been a long time. Have you thought about upgrading? And they say the same thing that I'm saying to you today, which is this camera is what I love to shoot with, and it still gets the job done. So as Paul Friedman, you're gonna see me shooting the X-T3 a lot more and more, and you'll see me with a 5D in my hands less and less over time, because I am kind of a mirrorless fanboy. But whenever we're out and Spencer Mandel is shooting, he's gonna be shooting the 5D Mark IV, and for so many good reasons, some of which I haven't even listed here because this video is getting way too long. And if you're still here with me, that's awesome. Thank you. Well, I hope I've shed some good light on this camera. I hope I've answered a few questions for you, and if you're thinking about picking up a used 5D at a discounted price, I highly recommend it. You will not be sorry. If you're thinking about getting rid of your 5D, maybe I've convinced you to hang on to it for just a little while longer. So that's going to wrap up our gear review today of the Canon 5D Mark IV and whether or not it was relevant in 2020. To sum up, the answer was yes, it is. If you disagree, or if you have anything that you wish I'd said and didn't say, leave it in the comments below right now. If you hate DSLRs, tell me in the comments why you hate DSLRs. If you are all about the mirrorless, or if you hate mirrorless and you're all about the DSLR still and you're never gonna make the switch, let me know down below. And yeah, do all the other, YouTube things. Give me a thumbs up and subscribe and, all the YouTube stuff. So, all right. Okay, bye.